Well, thank you so much for staying with the Monday Report. Let me bring in Julius Scott. He's the Deputy High Commissioner from the UK. Julius, thanks for making time and being patient. So why did you pick the regulatory framework in terms of support from the UK government to Kenyan government?
Good evening, and thank you. It's good to be on the show, and it's good to be discussing these successful partnerships. So we picked this particular area because the starting point for us was that was one of the key areas that business said was important to them. So they highlight a number of issues. CS Mohammed has talked about a number of them on trade, on regulations, on access to finance. So we were working on a lot of these areas. But the particular regulatory issue, this is something that business has said is very important. And we've probably put in about 3.5 billion shillings into this area, working on policy issues, working on dialogue between the public and private sector, working on automating some of the processes. So it's a really, really important area. And the success has been really impressive. So if you look at the World Bank's ease of doing business ratings, Kenya has risen from 136 about 6 years ago to 56. So it's risen 80 places up the rankings. And that's really impressive because everyone else is also working at the same time to improve their business environments. So that's the area we've been working on regulation. But we work on the other areas. We work on trade. Your reports earlier talked about the economic partnership agreement we've just concluded today. The instruments of ratification have been exchanged, but we do a lot more work on trade. A few years ago, if you tried to cross the border, it would, between Kenya and Uganda, it might take you a week. It'll take you hours now. If you were trying to get into Mombasa port, it would take you days. It'll take you hours now, and that's because of work that we've done with our Kenyan partners. And through Trademark East Africa, terrific organisation. So many of these areas we've been working on, and others like Tech, the UK Kenya Tech Hub, that did this particular work on the business regulation toolkit. So that's an area where there's so much potential, so much dynamism, but things are moving very fast. So you want to work with them. So we work on many areas. But for us, the starting point is always asking the question: what is the barrier to business, or what is that opportunity that we can help businesses achieve? All right.
Samuel, as the KNCCI, what are some of the interventions you've done, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, for SMEs and even MSMEs?
Thank you, Trevor. As you are aware, what we do is actually key on advocacy, trade development, and the most important is actually the SME development. So if I could mention just a few interventions that we did as the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. One is participating in the COVID response team, whereby we gave feedback from the micro and small enterprise and the business community in general regarding to tariffs. Remember, the turnover tax was at 3%, and after the advocacy that we did and the negotiation and dialogue with the government, that was reduced to 1%. And also, of course, the tax, the pay was also reduced from 30 to 25. Those are some of the efforts. And of course, later we realized that most of the MSMEs were actually most hit. And these include those hawkers, the mama mboga, and those who are doing small business. Because of the lockdown, they were not able actually to conduct their business, and the cash flow was very low. So what we did is we actually negotiated with the MasterCard Foundation, and they gave us some money, 400 million Kenya shillings, which we have since disbursed to the MSMEs. It is a fund that to enable access to finances, to be able to jumpstart the affected businesses, and it is actually it was whatever advantage it has is that it is interest free, and there was no collateral required, because most of those businesses could not actually even produce bank statements to show whether they have been doing business, because basically the business was hampered, and most of them closed down. They had to change even their businesses because some were rendered redundant and could not operate like in the tourism sector. So so far we've disbursed up to the 400 million shillings to more than 14,000 MSMEs, and the return rate, because it's a revolving fund, and the return rate is that we've already recovered back 100 million, which we are plowing back to the other MSEs, and those who borrowed could still borrow the second or third time. Something else that I want to mention is a partnership that we had with the Equity Bank, whereby the Equity Bank set aside more than 200 billion shillings, which is to be accessed to the micro and small enterprises. But of course, there's a criteria that is friendly and discussed amongst the bank and the chamber. And that will really cushion the MSMEs. Third intervention is we really appreciate the government for what the government did by providing us with an order to supply 7.5 million masks, which is a big plus. It really assisted the small tailors, those who are in the textile industry, who are doing ginning and making fabric, 100% Kenyan made, and so far we have disbursed quite a number, and by last week we received the first tranche of the money from the government up to 3 million shillings, which we have since paid the first batch of supplies, and that is ongoing. Recently we conducted an exporters breakfast meeting, which was very important because it brought on board many stakeholders in the business community, being government, private sector donors. And during that, why it was important is because of the networking and also getting feedback from the business community, how they have been hurt and how they have really been resilient to come back during this pandemic. And through that, we are able to really appreciate how the interventions that the government has put in place through both private sector and other government institutions, and that really has assisted us a lot. Finally, I want to talk about trade missions, because one of the challenges in a normal day is that MSMEs suffer most when it comes to access to markets. But during the pandemic, that was even worse, because the markets were closed, or time to operate during for market operations were really reduced, and that was good for our safety, but then it affected business. So as the chamber, we've been actually trying our best to ensure that business is not hurt most, and we negotiate with government to consider and extend the market time, which was done. And then of course, when the global travel was opened up, we were able to now start business missions, trade missions into the country and outside the country. Like tonight, I know there is a trade mission going to Turkey, and we've had bilateral discussions with different countries, and that has really eased the pressure on the cash flows and market access. Recently, when our chamber president and his delegation went to the UAE, we were able to be allocated an office in Sharjah in the UAE, and that is very important because going forward it will be used to showcase Kenyan products in that particular market that we are targeting. And there is more that is happening, and even as we gear forward to participating in the Expo Dubai 2020, which is going to give an opportunity to more than 6,000 products from across the globe. So basically that's what we've done. to address the challenges that I talked about, access to markets, challenges that SMEs face, access to affordable credit, and of course information, market information, which is also very vital for them to be able to know which product is required in which market and how we are able to really enable them to reach that particular market. I think that's it.
That's right. Let's talk about the SME Business Regulatory Toolkit, and that is the one thing Akinyi spoke about. Akinyi, let me bring you back into this conversation. On the SME Business Regulatory Toolkit, how will that really help MSMEs and SMEs from where you stand?
From where I sit, I would also just want to mention that not only am I an entrepreneur, but also I'm the chair of Kenya Fashion Council. And as I listened to Mr. Matonda speaking on what they've been able to do as a chamber, and can also proudly say that as Kenya Fashion Council, we were able to also do a lot during COVID, and we've been able to help flatten the curve. We engage a lot of tailors and doing business and just knocking doors to get some orders. So being an entrepreneur first, then having looked at the documents, I must say that the document is very informative and very important for anyone who's going to start doing business. And this is a document that I would encourage all those who are wishing to get into business or those who are looking into getting into business to actually use that document, because it's very well structured. It takes you from step to step. You have the plan your business section, and then you have the launch your business section, and you have the manage your business section and grow your business section. How I wish I had this before when I was starting my business. So I think we are at a good place. Of course, if you look at the bodies that entrepreneurs need to deal with, if you look at KRA, NHIF, NSSF, the City Council, KILDI, KEBS, all these organizations, they've already put them in the document. So depending on which business you're going to get into, and I think they featured about 10 businesses, just to mention a few. One is able to go and check, if I'm running an education business, I want to get into education. What are the things, what are the basics, what are the things that I need to look into? If I'm getting into manufacturing, which are the bodies that I need to engage? And personally, I've been able to engage government bodies as a citizen. And one of the things that I would like to tell Kenyans is to not to fear, because one of the things that has really, I would say, undone our businesses is the fear. And I want to believe that everybody in business or in the offices, whether it's a government office or a parastatal, they're paid by our taxpayers' money, so we have the right to go into those offices and find out what is going on. So as an entrepreneur, I've been able to be very intentional in what I do in regard to getting information, and also just knocking those doors and finding the information. So I think it's a document that entrepreneurs need to take advantage of. Believe you me, Trevor, I can't compare what I went through. I wish I could be given a whole hour to explain my journey of entrepreneurship. It's quite something, but maybe I'll have it in a book one day. But to be honest, the document, I support it. It's something that we need to look into it. And just to advise also the government bodies to be very, we can work together as entrepreneurs. One of the things that came out in the last time I had, on the 19th, I did mention that most of the government bodies, entrepreneurs seem to fear them. And I think they come from a very honest perspective where, and I was given an example of my own businesses. I volunteer to go to NHIF to start paying NHIF. I volunteer to start going pay when I'm doing pay and exam and NSSF. And then you realize when you volunteer to go start doing these things, you become marked, So like now, it's like you've now been marked and they're coming to follow you. I mean, and I kept telling them in most forums, I say, that I've come to you. I mean, you should be encouraging me to even do more, as opposed to, and look for others who are not doing this, and let's be friends. I mean, with the regulations followed, but please, can we work together so that even if I see a KRA officer coming to my office, I don't need to run away, I don't need to fear them, because we need to pay our taxes. But I think we need to have that relationship between the government bodies and the businesses, and we don't need to fear each other. Because if I didn't make any profit, I mean, I don't need to pay anything. So I'm just talking this. Yeah.
All right. Commissioner Julius, is the SME business regulatory toolkit the silver bullet, or should there be more that needs to be done?
So that's a great question, Trevor. I think it's a really good step forward. So if you look at it, the point about this is that it's for small business, and they've often been a little bit neglected. So it's for small businesses, and it's to help them to improve their performance and to improve their efficiency. And it's free, it's online, it's straightforward to use, and it helps business understand the regulatory and the legal issues that they will come across. And I think, King, you put it very well, you know, whether they're planning a business, whether they're launching a business, whether they're managing it, or whether they're trying to scale it. So it works through all of that. What's interesting to me is that it's very detailed. So when I was looking through it, for example, I came across, if you're in the leather industry and you're looking for finance, a really big issue, these are the kinds of people that can help. If you're looking to get a license to distribute in different kinds of counties, the toolkit has information on how much it'll cost in different counties. So it goes into very, very specific detail. So I don't think there's many silver bullets. But I think to complement all the wider reforms that the government has done, this is a very good specific resource, particularly for small businesses. And why does that matter? That matters because every day there's 200 businesses being registered in Kenya. Every year there's about 900,000 young people who come onto the labour force. So, and about 10-15% of those get formal sector jobs. So many of those people are going to be working in the informal sector. They're going to be trying to start their own businesses. And anything that can help them to better start those businesses, to ensure those businesses survive, to help those businesses grow, for us, that's a really good thing. So that's why we're so happy with it.
All right. CS, going into the future, what do you want to look at as your legacy, and what else is in the pipeline apart from the business toolkit we're talking about?
Well, I think first of all, the ease of doing business exercise is geared largely towards supporting the small and medium-sized businesses. The big businesses have lawyers, architects, and all the professional service providers who can go and argue their case. The things we are trying to make easy, to simplify, are things that are pain points for these small businesses who oftentimes can't afford to pay for those services, professional services. And so we need to look at what are some of these things we need to simplify. First of all, there are some rules and regulations that are in place to actually protect the citizens of this country. They are necessary and they are important. So for example, Kenya Bureau of Standards need to make sure that everything that enters this country, all goods, meets the standards required for consumption. The Poisons and Pharmacies Board, for example, make sure all the medicines that come into this country are important. In order to get certification for plans, approval for building, they must meet the standard. Now, the issue, and there are so many other things, others have to pay taxes, but how these transactions are performed, the experience small businesses go through, has been one of the biggest problems. Number one, there are so many touch points that are often manual, not to mention the number of days they take. It also, attracts rent-seeking opportunities that have been really a serious problem for small businesses. So the idea that we have in terms of the end game for this is to automate as many of these processes as possible. By the way, when we see some reforms that have happened in one particular area, it goes into a very low level of detail of mapping the processes. So if you want to transfer a property, for example, if you want to sell your plot somewhere, we have mapped the process from the land search, title search, right up to the way you go to the lawyers to do a contract, what happens within the Ministry of Lands. And we realized, these are 15 steps, each of them potentially, being asked to wait for a few days. So we collapsed this And we want to automate this. And you'll be pleased to know that the Ministry of Lands is at the tail end of launching, I think, a game-changing solution called the National Land Management Information System.
Yep.
That very soon, I wouldn't want to steal thunder from my colleague, who would be launching that, and the difference that would make in terms of automation, in terms of the valuation processes that needs to happen. So whether today we have done already filing, for example, electronic filing. If you want to do your construction filing, the architects no longer take hard copies of whatever to the city council here in Nairobi. The courts, we want to make sure that people do e-filing. Tax payment, iTax has been transformational. I mean, people just need to look further down a few years. Cane trade in terms of clearing of cargo through the port of Mombasa. Registration of companies. You can register today, now, as we speak, from the comfort of your home, register a company and probably get a certificate of incorporation tomorrow. And so the plan is reduce the number of touch points, automate as many things as possible, hopefully make them as low cost as possible, maybe even free, as we have done in some cases, and regularly counter-check this with the business community. Because if we don't have this loop of a feedback system, is this working, is this not working? Where are the frustration points? Sometimes we pass the laws and make sure that things are done. As we speak, there is actually a business amendment law that is in front of Parliament. We do these changes, but in practice, maybe things don't happen as much as we. So we do monitor some of these checks, and it is a continuous improvement process. The end game would be, in my view, would be a situation where I think the experience of people like Kenya and others would be to say, well, I can register my business without having to go to the company registry at all. I can connect electricity to my warehouse without having to step into the office of Kenya Power and Lighting. I can apply for construction permit. And all those are happening today, but taking slightly longer than we would like them to do. So, for example, it takes about a month to get connection for a small, medium-sized entity in Nairobi, and we want that to take less than a week. And we are having engagement with Kenya Power to see how this is done. And this is one of the really critical programs that His Excellency the President has made it very clear that in order to support small and medium-sized businesses, these are some of the things that we must do. None of these business people actually want free things. Neither do they want not to pay their taxes, but they just want to make sure that their interaction with government in terms of compliance is hassle-free. And that is what we are committed to do, and that is what we are going to work through to make it happen for them.
All right. By the way, if you're wondering about the SME Business Regulatory Toolkit that we keep talking about here, just log into www.kenyabusinessregulatoryguide.com. I'll mention that one more time. www.kenyabusinessregulatoryguide.com. You will find the SME Business Regulatory Toolkit that we're talking about that helps you navigate the entire business strata. But there's a question here for you, Samuel, and the question was about which criteria did you use to choose the people who will benefit from the 400 million shillings. This is from Macau. He says, please ask NCCI what was the criteria for selecting the beneficiaries of the 400 million from MasterCard, and if one wants to be a beneficiary of the scheme, what steps must they take now, and how much do you have to give to SMEs right now as we speak?
Thank you. If I could answer that, Trevor, is that we are in all the 47 counties. And we have county chapters whereby all our membership is drawn from across the country. And we really advertise this on all media, and they made applications through the county, the chapters. And the simple criteria was like they had an idea to do a business or they were in business. And of course, they were also able to make and submit the application. There is a panel that was looking at the applications and submissions, and I want to say that some counties actually they have not even made they have not met their margins, or not enough applications have been received from the counties, but it's spread across. There are some counties which have done much better because they have applied. Like Machakos, I can say that the uptake for Machakos was the highest.
Yeah.
The others were waiting to see whether the money was a loan, whether it was real, and that's why they did not make the applications. And we are really urging them to go forward and contact our chamber offices and be able to apply. So the single criteria was, even if they were not members, they were allowed to register as members and, of course, make the application. Why that was important, it was for follow-up and knowing exactly where they operate their businesses from. Whatever is available, I see it is a revolving fund. So the 400 million was given as one-off. However, once they borrow and they return, whatever that is gotten back is plowed back into borrowing in this next cycles. So as I said earlier, is that out of the 400 million, already 100 million has been returned, and that is what is now being processed for the second cycle to lend out.
Yeah,
I think that's it. I hope I've
that answers the question. And then there's also a conversation here on how this toolkit will be applied to KNCCI members.
Good. Trevor, if I could say something about the toolkit, and I want to recap on what CS said and also what Akinyi said earlier. Lack of information is what is really ailing the MSME sector, and they are not able to make decisions because of the lack of information. And as you know, ignorance has no defense. So if you, for example, you don't have information about the taxes that you're supposed to return, you don't have information on how you need to get your certification for different products that you are offering, you'll not be able to get or seek that service in the first place. So the toolkit is actually addressing that question of access to information, trade information.
Yeah.
And it is in, I could say what I could term it as is in one shop. It's like one-stop shop, whereby you have all the regulatory agencies, Kenya Bureau of Standards, the KIRIDI, you have the KIE, you have the micro and small enterprises, you have all these are coming together under one platform, be it the Business Registration Bureau or services, all are coming together, and with whatever service they are offering, they are linked in such a manner that the entrepreneur is able to get that service and information from one platform. And that is very helpful to our members, because the majority, as CS has rightly said, those who are not able to access these services are the micro and small enterprises, because when it's available to them, they are able to save on costs. They are able to save on travel costs, lead time, and also fast track the registration. And since it reduces the contact in the many processes, and I want to really recap and confirm that yes, the process was very long, but now it's crashed into a 7-step, and I think it will even reduce further. So it's going to be very important and essential for our members, because once they log in, they are able to get the information they require. They are able to know which events, which products are available in some market, and given that it is one-stop shop, it reduces it reduces that lead time, as I said, and it makes the MSMEs, most of them don't have that patience to wait for long and tie their monies. So I think that is very key, and I want to say that even in the changes in legislation that has been mentioned, if the information is shared in the platform, the MSMEs are able to know, and they'll know how it's going to affect them. And that will make them also be proactive in changing their way of doing business to be able to be compliant. Thank you.
Commissioner Julius, let me bring you back into this conversation. What are the future plans in terms of support between the UK government and the Kenya government, considering now we're looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, even post-COVID? What are the plans?
So a great question, Trevor. So a year ago, His Excellency the President went to London, met with our Prime Minister, and these issues of trade, investment, business, jobs, these were absolutely central to it. So this is the heart of the partnership between our two countries. In terms of the future, we're all very keen that we make sure we bounce back even stronger from the year we've all had. It's really been quite an unprecedented year. So we're particularly looking at three sets of things. So the first one is to focus on the specific issues that are now the binding constraints. So I think with the government, we've helped address some of the more sort of generic issues. I think we now need to look at some very specific ones in specific sectors. So for example, the insurance sector is rather underinvested in Kenya. So we think that's one where more work can be done. So that's one set of issues, these specific areas. The second one is very much around access to finance. So all business tell us this is a key issue, and we're keen to work on that from top to bottom. So we're trying to look at ways we can strengthen Nairobi as a financial centre and build the links with the City of London. Very high level ambition. We're working on the policy issues in partnership, and we're looking at how we also make investments into small firms and into micro entrepreneurs. So direct investments into firms, into business leaders. So that's the second set of issues, access to finance. And the third one is the UK-Kenya Tech Hub. The future is digital, and what we're trying to do is to work with our partners on how Kenya can grasp this opportunity. It's so well placed, but there are some quite tricky policy issues, there's some quite tricky tax issues, and then there's just the issue of how do you build capacity so that the country, with that entrepreneurial spirit, is ready to grasp the digital opportunities. So for us, those are three that we're particularly looking at.
Commissioner, I was reading the Times just the other day, and they had a title there saying "Business After Brexit: A Tale of Red Tape and Higher Costs," so to speak. Will Brexit affect relations or even possibly strain the relations with Kenya now?
So I think precisely the opposite, actually. If you look at what's happened just today, the economic partnership agreements, those issues were ratified, the instruments were exchanged. So that has meant actually more stability in the trade between Kenya and the UK. So the UK has always prided itself on being a low regulation economy. So that's exactly what we're aiming for as the UK, but that's also the kind of economy that Cabinet Secretary Mohammed was talking about. That's exactly the progress that's here in Kenya. So I think when you put those two together, you will see more trade between our countries. It's very balanced trade already. You'll see more investment, and you'll see less red tape. I think that's the ambition we're going for.
All right. Let me bring up Akinyi on this. Akinyi, as a business lady, you've been in this industry for more than 20 years. What are some of the recommendations you would make to improve effectiveness of business in the country, so to speak?
I think there's a bit of a break, so I couldn't get your question properly. Can you just repeat the question again? The
question is, what are some of the recommendations you'd make to ease in business based on your experience going forward?
Number one, I think I would like to commend the people involved in creating this great document. First thing that I would recommend is that if the public can be sensitized in regard to looking at the document and sharing it across, maybe CS Eden can be able to tell us what his plans are, so that we are able to share it across. I think it's a great document, and more needs to be shared across. I did recognize that they have videos which are shareable as well. If these videos can be shared across board on WhatsApp groups, I think it can reach to a wider scope of people in the country. And to the government bodies, I think I would just like to encourage us to keep engaging with SMEs and small businesses so that I would say we become friends in regard to dealing with each other. And then I think it's more attractive for SMEs to step up and register their businesses officially, because if you look at what has been researched, you realize most businesses are not registered, and maybe if they're registered, they don't go beyond 5 years. And if they get to 5 years, they start registering again another new business. So you're a constant, you say serial entrepreneur, because when something gets difficult, you go start another one, and then we are never going to grow our economy as we do that. So I think we need to encourage us, even as entrepreneurs, to involve these bodies and engage and be part of the conversation. Because a friend of mine did say that if you're not in the table, you'll actually be in the menu, and when the menu, you know what can happen. You can be eaten. So let's be on the table but not on the menu. Unless if you're on the menu, we can be eaten. So I think for me, that's what I would encourage, that the government to have more engagement. I always ask, is it that the government doesn't have a budget for marketing? I don't know, but I think there are amazing things that the government has done, and we need to share all these things, and also entrepreneurs need to step up and find out the information, because sometimes, as Mr. Matonda was saying, that you don't wait. Ignorance, there's no excuse for being ignorant. Yeah. And that's why I always say, for me, I have to go knock those doors and just find out what's happening. Okay. And it's amazing what the government has done if you find out for ourselves.
Mudendu here on Twitter is wondering, where is this toolkit you guys keep talking about? Mudendu, I mentioned earlier on there that you all need to log in to www.kenyabusinessregulatoryguide.com. You will find the toolkit there. Mudendu, I'll repeat this one more time just for you. www.kenyabusinessregulatoryguide.com. That's where the toolkit will be. That's the toolkit we're talking about. CS, we're running out of time here, but let me ask you this one question. And there's many questions that people are asking in terms of how to make business easier. What is the one thing you would want to be known for? The one thing that you'd want to be known for?
Well, this is not about me, actually.
It's about your department.
This is about the whole environment. It's a whole government approach. We are largely, until recently, a manual system government, for lack of a better word. And you don't need to go far. Just look at some of the way we keep our records, the judiciary, the lands, and a lot of other areas where some important activities happen. And that creates a lot of challenges. But when we talk about the ease of doing business, this is really an internal process. These are things that are within the control of government. And we are trying to fix broken bits and pieces. So, for example, many people, including ourselves, don't understand why a company has 100 employees and they make 3 returns, one for NSSF on one day, another one for pay-as-you-earn tax another day, another one for NHIF another day, another one for national industrial training. 4 different returns, 4 different entities, all on different days. Now, this is the way how they are all different parastatals. We're trying to bring all these together, and a business makes 1 return, and that is it. They don't have to deal with other government agencies. The government can do things internally. But what we are talking about, these reforms, regulations, law changes, to make it easy, are the internal processes. I think the more difficult part are issues that are external to us, that are not very much within our control. For example, access to market is a really important thing. And so some of the things we talked about, our access to the EU, to the UK, to the US, and many other markets, it's quite important. And we need to continue to review policies that make sure that a lot of our business community here have access, unrestricted access to as many markets as possible. We, for example, have realized a gap in the special economic zone and export processing zones gaps. That's why they haven't taken off as we had intended to at the beginning. And those gaps have just now been, Cabinet has recently directed that those be reviewed with a view to making sure that these special economic zones or EPZ activities are geared towards and pick up very well.
Yeah.
Now, once you fix those two issues, the internal and the market access, I think the other area is to play to your strengths. We can't be able to do everything as a country. We have some natural advantages and we have some natural disadvantages. So, for example, we can't compete in the areas of power generation, and the cost of power continues to be high. But we're very strong in issues that require skill sets and human capital. And we have a lot of young people who are unemployed, who could do things much better, quicker, more efficient than other countries. And that is why the government has been putting a lot of focus, for example, on textile and apparel industry, because a single factory can employ 2,000 to 3,000 people. There is one company, United Iron, that today employs more than 10,000 people, one company. And with the challenges that we have today, we've got to say, where do we need to fix for our people? And so the young, the youth, the unemployment is important. Do we have strengths there? Yes. Why don't we then provide support to those industries that will deal with some of those specific areas? Agro-processing, manufacturing, these are areas that would help a lot of our people. So all we have talked about in the ease of doing business is really just trying to fix some in-house domestic issues. But remember, we are competing even on those sectors that I've talked about with countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, Ethiopia in Africa, Lesotho, and many other areas. So this is something that requires working together between the private sector and government in identifying where it's hurting. What is the problem? And how can we make it easier? And trust me, some of the most basic things are the cost of compliance and government regulations have been a pain for people. And when the president said we must fix this area, he gave us that challenge when Kenya was ranked 136 out of 190 countries. We were in the bottom quartile in the world as an area that is attractive to do business. We want to be in the top quartile. We have to be below 50 in the ranking of the World Bank doing business, and we are well ahead in achieving those targets. But the real proof of the pudding is when the private sector come to us and say, it's good, thumbs up, it's working. And the way to do that is now we have documented all these processes. If you want to transfer a property, you don't now have to think about what to do and all this. You go to this portal that we've just developed, the toolkit, and this toolkit is a dynamic document that will continue to make it easy for people to interact with government. And hopefully one day people will be able to look back and say, is that how we used to do things 5 years ago? Because all of a sudden it can be done in hours as opposed to a week, which is very good today compared to a few years back, which was a month.
All right. Samuel, closing remarks from you. What are you looking forward to?
Thank you, Trevor.
Business.
We'll want to continue continue with the dialogue that we're having with the government and the government agencies, both the government that's county and national, because there are challenges that we identify, and once we dialogue, we are able to really rectify and create business. We are here to grow businesses and create wealth and create jobs. So the business community who have not joined the Kenya National Chamber will come and join us so that we are able to benefit from our services. And finally, to our valued stakeholders, we are here to really be part and parcel of the journey of making sure that the ease of doing business is achieved, and we are able to be among the first quartile, as the CS has confirmed, at number 56, meaning that we are moving closer to the mark. But then, of course, I'm pleading that we continue working together and let the stakeholders invest in us and trust us so that we move forward together.
Yep.
I think that's the parting shot I could say.
All right,
Thank you, Trevor.
Akini, closing remarks?
My closing remarks would be I would encourage all entrepreneurs not to give up, and especially this season of COVID. I know a lot of us have got challenges, and sometimes you feel left out. I would encourage us to keep hope alive and to build the economy of this country. And without God, it's impossible to actually achieve much. So let's depend on God. Let's keep praying, even and being healthy, wear your mask, wash your hands, and looking forward to more engagements on this.
All right. Thank you so much. Commissioner, what are your closing remarks?
Thank you, Trevor. We've had quite a technical discussion in parts. My closing thought is actually about how do we harness the aspirations of all these incredibly entrepreneurial people in Kenya. And I think I feel it's our job to do what we can to remove some of those barriers, to highlight those opportunities. And really, I think it's about helping so many of the people like Akinyi, so that they can fulfill their business dreams. I think that's what it's about. And if we've done that more and more, then I feel we will have achieved our mission. So that's my final thought. It's a really important discussion.
All right. CS comes to you, and now to close this for us, and there's many questions that are coming through to you. Jacob Abere Matlala says, good conversation. My question to the panelists is, do we have Marshall Plan policies to absorb university graduates to job market as to those of TVET? Because majority we see, they just leave and look for work with papers. You've answered that partly by empowering companies that can employ huge numbers of people and playing to your strengths. And also, Bluseno says, CS, in your assessment, what has been the biggest negative drawback to the realization of the 15% contribution of manufacturing to the national GDP? In your closing remarks.
Well, the one of the biggest benefit of this is if you look at Kenya, not entirely a unique situation to us, but to many African countries, is the significant number of young people who are looking for active employment. And we have come to conclusion, certainly in Kenya, that the government will not be able to absorb all these people. But we want to enable businesses, entrepreneurs like Akinyi and others to be able to do that. So supporting business to thrive, to grow, and be able to absorb many of these young people is the long-term solution. And that is why, businesses look at, outside of access to finance, they look at the cost of operation and the cost of doing business in a country. There was a time when making telephone calls was impossible. The cost of power seems to be an issue. But all those things, cost of infrastructure, travel, some of those things are being resolved through investments that are being done by government. And then, of course, the regulatory compliance that we are now describing as broadly as ease of doing business. And so this is all going to come together as a way of helping businesses thrive.
Yeah.
And as we're just talking, I'm just reading there, the bottom line there saying the judiciary e-filing just hit a glitch. It just shows that it's working. The fact that there is a problem just demonstrate that something has happened, but it would be able to come back. Okay. So we would like to see how we can get businesses to expand. When we started this ease of doing business 4 or 5 years ago, we were registering only 30 businesses in a month. Today we are doing between 200 to 300 businesses in a month. And never mind how many of those don't quite take forward to the last conclusion. But whether you are starting, whether you are expanding, or whether you are having challenges, all the regulations that we are doing is geared towards supporting that. And hopefully that would deal with some of the challenges.
Right.
Now, in terms of the 15% manufacturing challenge, we are largely a service-driven economy. And the manufacturing sector continues to grow. But because the service sector has been much bigger contributor to our economy. Anytime the service sector like tourism and transportation and others grow, then the proportion of tourism of manufacturing contribution to GDP tends to shrink, whereas in actually absolute terms, manufacturing is also growing, albeit some years much lower rate than the service sector. But fundamentally, manufacturing has had a few specific issues, and I'm sure the Kenya Association of Manufacturers will talk about issues like power, issues about the logistics, issues about clearance for export and imports at the port of Mombasa. A lot of these are issues that the government is now dealing with. Hopefully, once the Naivasha Industrial Park comes up, we will be able, as government, to provide power to companies, industrial companies there at between 5 to 7 US cents, as opposed to somewhere between 18 and 20 cents that they are getting today in industrial area.
Yeah.
And that will just transform and attract more companies that are big consumers of power, manufacturers, to be able to come to Kenya. And if you are able now to use the link from that industrial park in Naivasha all the way to the port of Mombasa, it just makes it that easier. And these are things that don't get done overnight, but all the heavy lifting have been done already. I think what is now left is just to get the industrial zone in place and be able to have the right policies in place. In this case, to attract probably both domestic big spenders as well as international companies, and that will have a big ecosystem that will support the small and medium-sized businesses that will come along with that.
All right. Special thanks to all of you for making time this evening. I'm sure we'll have this conversation again next time. There's a lot of questions coming through on the hashtag Monday Report. We couldn't pose all of them, but I'll be assuring you that we'll have this conversation at some point during our broadcast. Honorable Aidan Mohamed, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Eastern African Community and Regional Development, thank you so much for making time. Julius Court, Deputy High Commissioner to Kenya from the UK. Samuel Matonda, CEO, Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, that's KNCCI. And Akinyo Dongo, founder and CEO, Akinyo Dongo Kenya. Thank you so much for that enlightening conversation. If you're still wondering where to get that particular toolkit that we're talking about, check out www.kenyabusinessregulatoryguide.com. Look through it, pose all the questions. We'll have that conversation again at some point, all right? Good night for now. My name is Trevor Mbija, and on behalf of the entire team that made this possible, we say thank you and have a great night and a great week ahead. Bye for now.
Of Kenya, supported by the UK Kenya Tech Hub, in partnership with other strategic partners, have made it easier for entrepreneurs to plan, launch, manage, and scale their business, both locally and internationally.